Hello there, welcome to another live stream from Cloud with Chris. You're with me, Chris Reddington, and here we talk about all things cloud. Now, thank you folks for joining today. We have got a very interesting session. I mean, I'm biased when I'm talking about my stuff. It's always going to be an awesome session, right? But we're going to have a lot of fun. We've got a familiar face back on the channel. We are going to be bringing Carl Cook back to be the interrogator, interviewer extraordinaire, and we're going to be talking all about Azure integration. So we've teased it a few times. We've had a bit of a journey with these live sessions, actually. We started off, I think, talking about my Cloud with Chris architecture. Then we talked a bit about GitHub and how I'm using GitHub Actions for deploying some of the Cloud with Chris stuff, which has actually changed. So maybe we'll talk about that today as well if we get time. But also I tease this idea of an integration platform that I've been working on. I, of course, post all my content to Twitter, to LinkedIn, to Facebook, to Reddit, and talking a bit about the technology behind it, why I'm kind of doing it, and see where we go. So you know the deal, folks. If you like the content, if you like the episode that we're going to be doing here, please drop a like, please subscribe, hit that notification bell. And otherwise, let's go and introduce our host for the evening, Carl Cook. Good evening, Carl.
Hi, Chris. How are you? Thanks for having me. How's it going?
Good. All good. Really pleased to have you back. We haven't scared you away twice now. You've been on, and you're back joining us. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great. I enjoy these sessions where we get to investigate and do a deep dive on an architecture or a solution. So yeah, looking forward to tonight.
Awesome. So we've got an interesting one. I think, everyone's understood Cloud with Chris. It's really easy to understand because I guess a lot of people use the site. They kind of see it and interact with it. They get the GitHub Actions side because that's how I deploy it. And I guess we're all familiar with either Azure Pipelines or GitLab or whatnot. But integration services, maybe not everyone is as familiar with. And I'm using it in a slightly nuanced way. We were just talking before going live. So I guess this is where I sit back and I go into guest mode and talk about everything and hand the reins over to yourself, sir.
Sure. So in the last two sessions, if you've joined us now for the third session that I've been on with Cloud with Chris, you'll know that we've done a bit of a deep dive into what Chris uses to support his blog site, cloudwithchris.com. So it's Hugo, it's Azure Storage, it's CDN, perhaps it's like I've just done, moved to the static web apps for the same stuff, but anyway, we'll get to that later. But tonight we've talked about the platform and what he's using and how he integrates all of that into CI/CD pipelines. But tonight we're going to talk and investigate what Chris has styled an integration platform. So integration to me means the pulling of many services together. So let's see what services he's pulling together. Let's see what he's using it for and how it's helping his blog site. The whole point of these is to give the community of bloggers and content creators ideas as to what they can do with their platform and how they can integrate it with other services. So let's get stuck in. So do you want to tell us, Chris, at a high level, what this is?
Yeah.
And what it does?
Yeah, absolutely. So what it is obviously people see that I'm active on things like Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Some may even recognize my username over on Reddit as well. I post content. I create my own content on Cloud with Chris, but I also amplify content from sites like the Azure blog, Azure Updates page, GitHub blog, Azure DevOps blog. And some people are awesome with social media and are able to keep up to date, retweet things, and have a great connection. But I'm not someone who can really be chained to social media all that time. It just doesn't work well for me. I don't really work well that way. And thinking about, I need to post this thing then, I need to do this thing here. So really the platform is all about how I post either my Cloud with Chris stuff to those social platforms or amplify some of the Azure stuff that's out there as well, or the GitHub stuff that I mentioned a bit earlier. So Pixel Robots is saying Pixel Robots blog as well. I'll need to add that to my list. But indeed, really it's a case of taking many different sources and then doing something with it and then pushing it out to my my various platforms then that I have.
Okay, that sounds good. So, do you want to talk us? So the why is probably obvious to save you time because you're cloud solution architect at Microsoft. So I don't imagine you get a lot of time just to be sitting going, on Twitter or whatever during the day. So this integration platform, I imagine, saves you a lot of time. Is that the only why, or was there because you wanted to learn something, because you wanted to do it, or?
Yeah, good question. It's time saving was the big thing for me. Not being able to, being really brutally honest, what I found was I was actually slipping behind on updates and things. Like if I wanted to go and push out and advertise, hey, I released this new blog post, or hey, there's this new episode which is now live, I was really rubbish at marketing my content. Notoriously. I've admitted it on other shows, on other podcasts and whatnot. And it was something that I was just really bad at. And I needed a way to get better at that. I love automating things. So it was a no-brainer. How can I achieve that through technology? But likewise, I've done work with customers on things like Logic Apps, functions, Service Bus, queues and things, but I'd never really thought about it for my own projects. I was thinking, right, I've used it in typical enterprise scenarios, let's say. How can I use it for something maybe a little more off the wall, a little bit different, and potentially just showcase how anyone could start using integration services? And that's what I'm looking forward to talking about today. It's going to be fun.
Excellent. So to summarize, part of the why is because it was fun, or because it is fun, and to make sure that you can spend as much time creating content and less time focusing on the mechanics of how that all works. So if anybody's creating content, even my one blog every 3 months, if we can focus more as content creators, if we can focus more on creating and writing and recording, as opposed to where do you need to tweet this, or where do you need to post this in LinkedIn, or can I put this in different platforms? If we can integrate all of that into some sort of automation platform, which is what we're going to talk about here, all the better. Yep. So we've covered the why, we've covered what it is and what it does. Might go into a bit more detail on what it does as we go into the architecture here. Do you want to talk us through the architecture then?
I would love to. And for that, let me change my screen here. We, of course, have diagrams because we love diagrams, right? I have to have a diagram, because I think the amount that I talk either with customers or with people in the community and I say, oh, if you put a diagram together, if I didn't, I think I would be the biggest fraud ever. So have to have a diagram. So I got a nice logical one here. So it's a really high level thing, right? Because my requirements for my platform, if we start there first before we dive into the diagram itself and the technology, my requirements are really simple. I'm not saying that I need thousands of messages going through every minute or anything like that. I'm not saying I need to have everything attached to a virtual network. And yes, I can absolutely zoom in. Let me do that. There we go.
That's a lot better.
And I can also rearrange the live stream if we need, folks. So please just shout if we need that at all. In fact, you know what? I might just do that. Bear with me. I'm going to do a bit of multitasking.
No
Bring in.
Thanks to everybody that's joined us while Chris is rearranging stuff there. If you have any questions, anything you want to know, or any ideas for contributions to this platform, stick them in the YouTube chat there, and I'll make sure we get to them.
Perfect. Thank you for filling some time there whilst I do some resizing. Good. So hopefully that's a bit clearer for everyone. Thanks for the feedback in chat. So yeah, as I was saying about requirements, I guess I don't have intense requirements for this platform. I don't need private networking or anything like that. I'm not saying I need hundreds or thousands of messages going through every second or minute. It's really about having a platform that I can expand over time. So the reason I really make that point is because I did have a V1 of this platform. And it was what I would call build it as you think of it kind of idea. So it was a little bit of duct tape, a bit of glue, a bit of, I think I used Microsoft Flow, I used a bit of Teams and loads of bits and pieces. Basically a art of the possible, what could I make if I pulled these things together? And it worked, but it wasn't something that was easy to maintain, easy to debug when things went wrong. I had many different implementations to try and solve the same problem, and it just wasn't scaling, quite frankly. And given that this is something I do in my spare time, I want something as low touch as it can be. I know that once I've made it, it's pretty much going to run and do what it needs to do. And if I need to redeploy it to another region or something like that, then I can do that. So that's where I really focused my requirements. So what I've got in this architecture, if we just kind of step through it all before diving into the bits and pieces here, is on the very entry point to this integration platform, I've got some logic apps. And what those logic apps are doing is basically just watching a series of RSS feeds. So in the diagram, I've got my episode watcher, I've got my blog watcher. In reality, I've got a watcher for the Azure DevOps blog, the Azure blog itself, the Azure Updates RSS feed, loads of different entry points. And they're all just watching, and as soon as they see a new blog post come out, they post some content into Azure Table Storage. At that point then, Azure Table Storage just stores the content. Nothing really happens at that point, nothing particularly interesting. Until an actor comes along. That actor is me. Hello. And what I do is I go to an Azure function. So my Azure functions are all written in .NET. I believe I'm using .NET Core, because I don't think I would have went down the full framework.NET path. And what this does is it generates a UI on the fly, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. I could use Azure Static Web Apps or something else, because that's now went GA since I kind of architected this. So I am thinking maybe I do that a little bit later, but it's not a high priority for me at the moment. And then what happens on this UI is I have a load of options to either approve content, reject content, decide where I want the content to go, for example. And then what happens is that gets processed by an Azure Durable function. So it gets split off into loads of different pieces. And again, we can look through the logic of that a little bit later as well. And ultimately what happens is a load of messages get put onto a service bus topic, not a service bus queue. And this is a really important point decision-wise from my architecture. So the reason I went topics and subscriptions is the point I mentioned in the very beginning. Thinking about the extensibility that I want to the platform. If I decide at a later point, hey, I want to, for example, I want to be able to create a summary of different posts that I've done over a month, for example, or something like that. It gives me a potential integration point a bit later by using subscriptions. But again, we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. So messages go on to Service Bus topic. I then have a number of different subscriptions, which are basically listening to that topic. So it's kind of effectively sending the messages to the appropriate. Think of it like a different queue for different items, if you like. So I have effectively a subscription for things that need to be posted immediately. I have a subscription for things that need to be posted as a roundup. And I have a subscription then for things which need to be posted as schedule. This roundup one isn't implemented yet, so that's still a piece of work that I need to do. Excuse me. But the immediate one and the scheduled one are both implemented. So what happens then is these are both logic app processors on the back end. And what they do then is there's just a kind of a switch statement inside that logic app looking at the message. What platform is that message supposed to be sent to? Is it going to Twitter? Is it going to Reddit? Is it going to LinkedIn? Is it going to Facebook? And then performs the appropriate action then based upon that message that has gone through. And in a nutshell, that is the platform. That is the end-to-end flow. And it probably makes a lot more sense when we demo it in a sec, but yeah, That's it.
Excellent. So, Richard Pixel Robots is asking about the Logic apps. Are they all on timer triggers? And or do you have a mix of triggers?
We can certainly jump into that when we start looking at some of the services. But
Sure.
the Logic apps which are reading the RSS feeds, there's actually an RSS feed trigger to check when when a blog has published a new post. I'm sure it does something like looking at the last published date, etc. as well. Yeah. And then it'll basically poll every frequency that you set, basically look at the RSS feed, I guess look at some kind of internal state of what the last published date was, compare the two, and then react to that as needed.
So I have a Logic app that pretty much does the same thing. It monitors the RSS feed on my blog, and as soon as it sees a new one, then it'll tweet and it'll post on LinkedIn. I have it running every 3 hours.
Cool.
Because it doesn't really need to run every hour. Because again, I'm not posting content every day, or multiple times a day. I think Richard and I in work have been talking a bit about Dapper and using Dapper. So his question is, did you look at using Dapper with your functions for the service communications?
Not really, to be honest, because I didn't really see a need for it because it's quite a simple solution. I think where Dapper shines is when you've got lots of different services that you're trying to, not obfuscate, that's the wrong word. You're trying to make a nice interface and make it really pluggable. And I guess I don't really have that requirement for what I'm doing here. But it could be something I take a look at in the future, to be fair. But I'll be honest, it wasn't really something that came up on my radar with my requirements and what I needed, to be honest. But could be interesting to explore, if I want to easily swap services out a bit later on. Yeah.
Excellent. Do you want to show us it in action?
Yeah, of course. So let me first show the actual site itself, and then we can look maybe at some of the resources behind the scenes. So this is my actual website. So if you go to approvals.cloudwithchris.com, you'll see a nice Azure Function kind of landing page there. And then as you add the /API approvals endpoints on the end, you'll get a page which is dynamically rendered. So all that I've got is an Azure function on a GET request that is basically pulling in some static content. So that's why I say, actually, it could just be a static web app, to be honest, that's served. Only reason I did it inside the Azure function was because I was just working on another project which implemented the same pattern, and just from reuse, just decided to go with the same thing. More laziness than anything, to be really honest with everyone. But it works, and it's just me using it. We're not talking high scale, so it's fine. And as you can see, what's happening here is I've got a load of different items appearing on this page. Now, all of these are populated from the Azure table storage that I mentioned a bit earlier, and we'll take a look at that in a sec as well. So it's basically just pulling the data straight from there. So these are all the blogs which have been posted since I last basically approved my posts, right? So I actually did this yesterday. So this goes to show that how much content just gets posted out. And if I had to keep up to date trying to post everything, no way.
Yeah, I throw some Azure updates into our work Teams channels every other day or so. And I looked this morning and there must have been about 30 updates just overnight. So today was a particularly busy day for Azure updates alone. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's no way you could be keeping up with that manually if you were wanting to relay that information out to Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever it is. So it would take up far too much of your time.
Not at all. And the other important point, right, is I have some flexibility with the way that I've designed this page, because this page is something I've made. It's written in Vue.js. it's something where I've had full control over the application that I've built here. It is all on GitHub, by the way, so if anyone's interested in my extremely poor coding in Vue.js, you can absolutely go and shame me. But if you do want to shame me, put in a pull request to make me feel better.
Yeah. we'll get to talking about open source and how people can contribute and help this project evolve in a little bit, but carry on.
Perfect. Let's take a look. So I don't know, what's an interesting post here. Here we go. Here's an interesting post. CSI storage driver support on Azure Kubernetes service. I'm a big fan of AKS. I think my followers would like that because I'm also conscious of the type of content I post, that I'm not overwhelming people, that it's relevant to my audience that follow me. Yeah. So you'll see here, all I've done is I've clicked on this add action button. And this is one of the things where I've really been thoughtful about the way that I build this platform. So I can remove individual actions. I can make multiple actions as well. And you might be thinking, hold on, Chris, why on earth do you want multiple actions per news item that comes in? Well, there are different actions that I want to take, quite frankly, because some content I might want to post immediately, and I could do that maybe just to Facebook. I might want to post it immediately to LinkedIn with a different message, for example. And you can see here that, I could post a message saying, hey, Facebook followers, here's my new message kind of thing. And hey, LinkedIn, here's my professional voice kind of thing going on. Etc. etc. So I've got that kind of scenario. I could schedule a message for the future, and as I mentioned, I could do a roundup, which I haven't quite done yet. Now you'll notice the Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, they're all just checkboxes. But for anyone that uses Reddit, you might be thinking, hold on, for Reddit, you don't just post to Reddit. You have different boards, you have different kind of things you're looking at. Completely with you. So, I might be interested in posting to the Azure R Reddit. And you can see here that I'm pulling all of the different flares for the Azure subreddit there as well, and specifying where I'm going to post that. So all of this is logic which I've kind of programmed into this Vue.js app, and now gives me that ability to expand, because I've been able to make it in such a way that each item will have a number of different actions, and then each of those actions basically gets crunched up and spat out to that topic then, and it's the consumers that then deal with the routing of what needs to go to where. This is just me saying, right, these are the actions I want to go and take. And one of the little things, which was a really quality of life thing, we all know that Twitter has word count limits, right? Or character limits. So you can see over here, I've got my character counter going on here, which is nice, fair enough. But hey, when I post on Twitter, I don't just want to post the tweet of, hey, this is my message, but I also want to post in my URL to that link as well. And you can see I've just got a nice little short code that I've programmed in there that gets replaced in the output. Better yet, I actually built on someone else's platform later on in my Azure function. I think it was Isaac Levin. But Isaac Levin built from someone else as well. So this is the open source.
Joys of open source.
Exactly. Building and building and building and, building on top of each other's victories. Is when that link goes through to my Azure function, there's some code in there which is basically looking for a URL. If it detects a URL, then what it does is it goes ahead, sends it to another service that I have running, a URL shortener. So you may notice some of my links have a cloudchris.ws link and then a short code afterwards. That's how they're generated. So as part of this process, send across to that external service, get the short URL back, where then I can trace, hey, has someone come from Twitter? Has someone come from LinkedIn? Has someone come from Reddit? So it helps me with my content and knowing where I should really focus certain aspects of my content then. So it's helping me as part of that feedback loop. So if we actually be a bit real here and actually schedule a post here. So let's say, I don't know, interesting update. Let's take a look first at what this post is. Of course, we need to take a look at what posts are here. So we've got container storage interface as a standard in Kubernetes, good, know that. Announcing general availability of CSI storage driver support on AKS for Azure Disk Storage and Azure Files. So that's great news. So then let's go ahead and say interesting update about CSI storage drivers being released in GA for AKS. Put some hashtags in for good measure. Kubernetes. And all while I'm watching my character count, thinking, right, have I left enough space for the URL? How am I kind of trending here? Is everything looking okay? And that looks good. I think that all looks good to me. Let's just add Cloud and Cloud Family. And I think that looks like a good update.
Excellent.
So one more thing before we go and approve is I've got this password box up the top. So with Azure Functions, when you call a Azure Function URL, you can go ahead and require some kind of authorization. I'm just using the basic access tokens that are built into Azure Functions. I'm not using JSON Web Tokens or anything like that yet. It is on my backlog and I'm nearly there with the implementation for it. But this is just really simple, rudimentary. It works. No one else knows that super long passcode, so very low risk. And if someone did get it, then I would rotate that key anyway. So, it's not, for what I'm doing here, it's not a significant risk at this time.
Okay, excellent.
So if I just go fill that password in there, I can go now, hit approve on that. I get a nice little pop-up saying, hooray, this was posted, disappears from the list, and now that's scheduled, ready to go on the back of my list of scheduled posts. And equally...
Okay, so...
Yeah.
When you say scheduled, do you have a schedule that runs on? Is that something else that's going to have to trigger another piece of logic that's...
Yeah, so what I use for that is an external tool called Buffer. So it's a third-party service. And I've got a Logic App action, which basically puts stuff onto my Logic App. Onto my Buffer queue. So I have slots scheduled in Buffer, and we can take a look at it in a moment. Sure. But effectively, I have different slots. That is logic I eventually want to go and make myself and get rid of the dependency on Buffer because it's a service I pay for. But, for the time being, it works. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a question there from Richard. Do you have a dashboard for your feedback loop?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So whilst I answer that, Rich, I'd love to know, when you say for the feedback loop, are you thinking more about the, the link clicks, or are you thinking more about the success of these different posts, I guess, if that makes sense? Because I guess there's a slight nuance to that. Because right now what happens, and this is some logic that I want to change, and this was a bit of a limitation I introduced, is right now, if I approve something or if I reject something, it gets deleted from table storage. So I no longer have a record of that post anymore, of that update. So if I ever in the future wants to go back and reschedule something or repost something, I don't have that capability right now. And that's fine. It's not the end of the world, right? We can retweet, we can copy and paste things. But again, it's a quality of life thing I'd like to build back in. And it's not going to be a huge development effort, so not a big deal. So that capability I don't have yet because of a limitation I quite frankly introduced into my system. But on the other side with the URL piece, yes. And this is talking more to the work that Isaac did. I can't take credit for this. But Isaac has a repo, which I'm sure we can bring up and show if folks are interested, where he has... I think it was all those types of things as well. So yes, I've got a Power BI dashboard for that. And of course, then for my Cloud with Chris content, I've got Google Analytics on my website where I can actually see then, as part of my Google Analytics usage, where people are coming from. Is it Reddit? Is it Twitter? And honestly, it has hugely helped. Like when I did my build write-up back in May, I could see it accounted for 10% of my traffic, and I could see how much of my traffic came from the various social platforms. So that was a really interesting and eye-opening experience, actually.
Perhaps a Google Analytics video is in your future then, because I have it, but have no clue how to use it at all. So
honestly, I've had it implemented on my site for probably over a year, and I haven't really properly used it until the last 3-4 months. And this has again been a big drive for me about focusing on SEO, focusing on how I just get better at marketing my content, because that's ultimately what it is. No one's going to view it if they don't know about it.
Richard's with all the questions tonight. So what platform do you find you get most traffic from?
Oh, it's a good question. It's between Twitter and Reddit typically, but I do get spikes from LinkedIn depending on the type of content that's being posted. And if there's interest, maybe we can do another session focused a bit more around just SEO and looking at analytics and stuff that comes through on the site, perhaps.
Sure, I just use that entire session as a learning experience. I am awful with it. So,
and honestly, I'm not perfect at it either, right? I'm still definitely learning on that. Interestingly, though, to Richard's point, I have noticed over recent months my natural Google search traffic coming in gradually increasing, which I'm really surprised by. And I did make some SEO tweaks to my site probably within the last 3 to 4 months, so I suspect that may have had an impact on it. But it's just really interesting seeing that starting to creep up a bit.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I suppose if you're, and we'll get to the dev too and the medium stuff later on, but I suppose if you're posting content and backlinks to yourself, then Google is seeing more of your content about, so that's bound to be happening, your search placement. Just check the chat before we move on. So
so they're getting all the tips to market content and get some good feedback from Facebook groups. Reddit seems very hit and miss. I agree with Reddit being hit and miss. Even which subreddits you post on, I'll be honest, Reddit recently I've found not being so fruitful for me, actually. And yeah, certain subreddits can be very unwelcoming, let's say, about you posting your content.
That's what I experienced on Reddit. Now I'm sure that not all of the subreddits are the same, and I wouldn't like to tar everybody with the same brush in a sweeping generalization, but I'll still make the said sweeping generalization anyway. Some subreddits can just be downright hostile.
Yep, they can. And I've had people who I won't name who actively avoid Reddit because they're scared of it.
On Reddit anymore because not that anybody has really had anything bad to say about some of the stuff that I put on there, but just when you're sitting and you're scrolling, you know, this doom scrolling that you do, you just happen to be on Reddit and you're just and you're reading stuff, you're going, really. So you know, I find Reddit can be quite hostile, but your mileage may vary. So
exactly.
Okay. Do you want to show us anything else about this, or
so? I think let's jump into some Azure. I think that sounds like a good plan.
Let's look at how this stacks up in the Azure portal. Sure.
Yeah. So, I guess the two resource groups that we're particularly interested in here are the integration resource group and the integration approvals resource group. So, let's look at the approvals one first. And I probably should have turned on my Azure mask before this.
Everybody close your eyes quickly.
There we go. No one saw anything, okay? So you can see here what I've got is the approval function that we were looking at just a moment ago. So it's an Azure function, application insights, of course, for the telemetry for that as well. Storage as the backend for the function, and then my app service plan where the function is hosted on. That is the Azure function that we were literally just looking at. So this is the one that presents the front end and then does the processing of decomposing that message, pulling it apart, splitting it into separate messages then. So one for Facebook, one for Twitter, one for LinkedIn, for an individual action. So as an example, this would be 3 messages, if that makes sense, because it's going on to immediate, it's a Facebook, it's a LinkedIn, it's a Twitter. This would be 6. Because you've got immediate and there's 3 platforms, he got scheduled in those 3 platforms. If I add in another action and then we just post it to Reddit, then that's 7 actions altogether that are being taken. So 7 messages being chunked up and sent to my service bus topic then. So that's ultimately what the back-end Azure function is doing, is taking that input from the front end, pulling it apart so that then it can be sent for the back end to be individually processed message by message then.
Okay, excellent.
So that's what happens in that one. I don't think there's anything interesting really to show in that one otherwise, to be really honest. This one's probably a little more interesting. So there's a lot more going on in this one, as you can see here. So this is the resource group that contains my episode watcher, my blog watcher, and all the other watchers that are out there. It also contains my table storage for my content. It contains the service bus topic, then my Logic Apps processors for these kind of back-end processing pieces as well. So you can see all those here. So the app service team, for example, have a blog that they publish to. I'm watching that one and put that into my table storage to approve posts. The Azure blog, Azure Updates blog, Azure DevOps blog, the customer software engineering team at Microsoft, I think it was, my Cloud with Chris blog, throwbacks. So I get a random episode every week that I throw back to and say, oh, this was a fun episode to write or something like that. My recent blogs which come out, episode throwbacks. So again, an episode that I previously recorded, recent episodes that are announced.
Yeah.
These are then the processors. So the integration immediate. So posting that stuff which is on the topic to buffer. So it goes to LinkedIn, to Twitter, to Facebook. Same for the schedule one. This is a storage account where the table storage is. This is a blog watcher again, Visual Studio one, and a VS Code one then as well. And of course the API connections then for my Logic Apps there as well. So
okay, that's excellent. I mean, you're watching specific topics and software in specific topics, but the logic works for regardless of what sort of content you're creating. So
exactly.
I mean, this information doesn't really isn't really aimed at the Azure community or the Microsoft 365 community, just while I see cloud management community there. This sort of content, sort of transcends all of that. I mean, you could be writing about makeup or whatever, or you could be writing about flowers or dogs or houses or whatever. I mean, the same sort of principles apply. You can use this integration platform to, elevate your status, elevate your, as you said, you're noticing your place on the Google search, perhaps not just to do with the SEO, but perhaps to do with an awful lot of what you're doing here. So that's excellent.
Exactly. So just to kind of prove out, if I jump across, where am I going here? Storage Exploring. Here we go. Look at my tables, look at my content. You can see in here is all my different posts that we were looking at a moment ago on that Azure function. So these are all of the posts which are pending me to go and do something with them. So once I click approve or reject, my function removes it from this right now. What I'm going to do is update the logic so that it changes a flag and then either it displays or it doesn't display. And then what I can do is kind of retweet throwbacks kind of things if I want to.
Excellent. So you're pulling in an awful lot of content here, as Richard says in the chat. You're pulling in an awful lot of content, and the fact that you're manually approving this stuff means that you're not generating an awful lot of noise.
Correct.
On your social platforms, because as much as plenty of communication and tweets and LinkedIn posts, Facebook posts are all good for your SEO and all of that, the extreme of that isn't true. Too much of this will send you the other direction as well, and people will just get upset and just unfollow you, which you don't want either.
Exactly. And as you can see, right, just while we're talking, I'm rejecting some of the things because there are just certain topics which they're important. Databases and data is absolutely important for app dev concepts. You don't really have apps without data. But in all honesty, that's not authentically my voice. If I think about my channel and what I talk about, that's not really my focus area typically. So Cosmos DB is. So Cosmos DB I would kind of keep in my list. But when I'm looking at things like Postgres and MySQL, etc., I don't often talk about that. So hence why I would have just rejected those ones there, for example.
Fair enough. So I'd like to move on and maybe have a look at a bit more of the architecture. I think you want to show us in the portal and have a chat about Buffer. But Richard wants to know, do you know how much time you spend on a day going through the content and basically doing what you're doing there? How much time do you spend each day doing what you've just been doing there? Approving content, rejecting content?
So I don't do it daily. I probably do it every half week or so. So maybe every 3 or 4 days. And maybe 10, 15 minutes, let's say. As opposed to that time breaking up my day. And this is the difference for me, right? This is something very targeted and scheduled and intentful, me going, right, let me take a look what's in the backlog, what's come in that I need to go and take a look at. So if I know that I've just released an episode, for example, and I want to go and post about it immediately, that might be a good point for me to go in and check and see what's on the backlog. And that's where I just do a quick review. So it's something natural, part of my flow, and I'm getting value whilst I'm there because there's other posts that I want to go and approve and post out there. So rather than it being something disruptive to my day-to-day activity and, oh, look, there's this interesting post, I need to make sure I think about scheduling that in or posting that at some point and actually doing that.
Yeah. And you're scheduling this stuff as well for some of it, so you're never going quiet for days at a time. If you have a schedule running, so it's tweeting and doing what you need to do while you're off working or between times. So that brings us nicely on to, let's have a look at Buffer.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I think the term schedule I need to change as well and tweak a bit. Because it's really queued rather than scheduled. It's not like I'm saying it's going to go out at 7 p.m. on this date, which again is functionality I want to add. And it's actually really easy for me to add. It's capable inside of Service Bus directly. You can associate a time for delivery with a message. So all I need to do, the logic is there. I just need to change my Azure function to say, right, put this message on the Service Bus with a send message of this time and send it to the immediate processor. And that's all I need to do. So I've got the building blocks there for that functionality. But this would be more of like a queue type thing. But again, I've got the capability for a queue there as well. I just haven't decoupled the Buffer capability out of this yet. But as you can see, here's a load of posts that I've got scheduled all the way up until Sunday afternoon. And obviously I've got a load that I need to review.
Do you mind zooming in a wee bit there?
Yeah. There we go.
So has Buffer randomly selected a time slot as you add things to the queue, or
no? So as part of the settings in Buffer, you specify a posting schedule for each of your channels.
Okay.
Now again, Buffer is a third-party service. It's just the one I happen to pick. I'm sure there are others out there that you could use, but it seems to. The thing that I really liked about Buffer is there was a Logic App action for that. So it had nice integration points for me to go and push into it, which is pretty much the primary reason I chose it, to be really honest.
Excellent.
Yeah. But yeah, plans are eventually I will get rid of Buffer and I will have that all running as my own service. Not there yet, and I'm a firm believer if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and nothing's burning at the moment, and while I don't have the time for it, it can just sit there and carry on, and it's just a subscription that I'm paying for every month, I guess. So
okay, super. So but your tweets, your LinkedIn messages, your Reddits that you choose to schedule, just join the queue here and then just hit the next post time per channel.
Yep, exactly. So you can even have it on a per channel basis, what those posting schedules are. So if you notice on LinkedIn and Twitter, I think I have 5 schedules for each of those, whereas Facebook, I think I had I've got 5 on there now. But there'll be different times. So again, if you're on one platform, it doesn't feel like suddenly everything's gone out across all of them at once. It maybe feels a bit natural.
And is there a reason, perhaps not, that you picked like 6 minutes past, or 24 minutes past, or 46 minutes past, 40 minutes to
Just to not make it look as obviously
uniform?
programmed as it is.
Okay, that's where I thought you were going to go with that, but I just had to ask because
Yeah.
it's affecting me that they're not all uniform. So
I mean, it didn't really affect me until you pointed it out, and now I'm looking at those numbers thinking, I don't like them. But yeah, it was literally just so it doesn't look like it's, hey, at 10 o'clock, this message has gone out kind of thing.
that's cool.
That was
No, it looks more genuine.
Yeah.
More less robotic. That's fine.
Yep.
That's an acceptable answer to what's staring at me in the screen here. So that's cool.
And again, it's
Okay,
not trying to not be inauthentic either, because I know it is automated, but the important bit, right, is all of these have been scheduled by me. It's not like all of these are random posts which my automation has picked up and gone, off you go kind of thing. I am vetting all of these before they go out, and then it's just pushed out to keep a conversation going and keep a presence going ultimately.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the various Azure components that you can see. Obviously, you can see the service bus namespace there. So we'll move on to talking in a minute about whether this is open source or not. I know we sort of alluded to the fact that it was, so I'll let you talk a bit about that, and then how people can maybe make use of this platform and what it would take, what the on-ramp is like for someone to come along, because Richard's clearly getting ideas about how he use this with Picture Robots. But for anybody that wants to get involved, either with contributing or building themselves this platform based on what you've done here, it'd be good if you want to talk a bit about the open source and what the on-ramp is like, and then we'll get to talk about what's in Git, what you have to sort of roll yourself, and the security considerations. So
yeah, of course. Before we jump into that, let me just finish off a couple of pieces on the Azure components first. So
sure.
Just to complete the picture for folks listening in. So we've got a topic here. That topic has some subscriptions. So the actions topic is where I send all of my messages. And then on these subscriptions, I have a filter. So only the messages that have a property action type of immediate go to this subscription. Only messages with an action type of schedule go to this one here. And that's how the routing then happens. And that's where I've got this great extensibility as a platform, because all it takes is a change of that action type, and then I've got a new processing flow that can happen there. Then what happens on the back end is you've got a logic app that runs, and that logic app looks a little like this. Here we go. So all that's happening is a message is received on a subscription. So that subscription for this one is going to be the immediate subscription. So we had the immediate, we had the schedule one, and then we just have a switch statement looking at the JSON, because all I've got is a JSON object here. And all it's doing then is saying, right, if it's Twitter, post it to my Twitter buffer there. If it's Facebook, paste it to my Facebook buffer. If it's LinkedIn, paste it to my LinkedIn buffer. If it's Reddit, don't do buffer. Do something different. And this is where I've implemented my own kind of Reddit process here then, and I actually post to the Reddit API. Reddit REST APIs are not fun. They are take a bit of interpreting, I think it's fair to say.
Okay.
So if anyone's interested in that, I can definitely put a post together on that. Maybe I should actually.
Maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah. But those are all the components at the end of the day there. So coming back to your question then, Carl.
Yeah.
It's open source in the sense the source is freely available up on GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, it's not in a state where someone can easily lift it right now, take it and use it. As in the code is, the code all works and deploys to an Azure function. But I haven't really documented or put together yet the infrastructure as code for like the service bus, the logic apps, all of those pieces yet. So there is work to be done there. So what I'd say is if anyone's interested on the Vue.js app side of things and developing some of that and has ideas about how that could be improved, absolutely there's ability to go and contribute into that now. I need to do some work to add licenses, the how to contribute docs, all of those kind of things, because primary focus has just been getting it running and working for a scenario, right? But as we mentioned before going live, one of my bold aims with everything I do with Cloud with Chris is I want all to be open source so that people can learn from it and potentially use it themselves. And I'm not there yet. Unfortunately, just been way too busy. We all know what it's like, right? Just things creep up on us. But that is the intent. So if there is interest in that, shout in the chat, let me know. And then I can make sure I can try and bump up that priority and make that a bit more of a focus. But absolutely,
I think Richard Packard Robots is certainly interested in this sort of platform, so you might get some contribution from him there. So the function app code is here, and the web front end and stuff like that. But what's not here, as you said, is the infrastructure code and the logic apps. So the logic app configuration and stuff.
Exactly. And I'll be honest, I was really naughty with the infrastructure. No one should listen to this point, but I created it manually, and I know I tell everyone not to do that.
in the portal?
Yeah, I did the click, click, click. Yeah, but I mean, again, it worked for what I needed for the time. It was like it span out. It was a POC. Does this work? Yes, it does. And I haven't gone back yet to go and either terraform it or bicep it out, and won't take long. That's the stuff I kind of do in my sleep, so it's just an item on the long growing backlog. So it'll get there. It'll get there.
That's excellent. So as Chris says, if it is open source to a point, although he does need to add a license to this, but I'm sure he'll be able to do that quick enough.
Yep.
But if anybody wants to contribute or anybody has any ideas, I'm sure Chris is open to you reaching out. That's excellent. So I want to talk.
Oh no, I think I've been disowned by Rich. He can never watch me again for doing click click in the portal. There we go.
So any security considerations with this sort of setup? Have you any concerns or anything that someone who isn't you, having developed this, should be concerned about or consider from a security perspective?
Yeah, I mean, like any development project, you've always got to think about security, and you've always got to think about what could go wrong. Mm-hmm. And if we think about it from the DevOps side first, dependencies is a big one. So, do I truthfully know, hands on heart, the dependencies that I've got in that project right now? If someone asked me, not off the top of my head, I think I've got Dependabot enabled on that repo, so it'll keep the versions updated and everything like that. But obviously that's an angle that could be used potentially. How you then go and call the Azure function, for example. So I mentioned about the Azure function currently uses this this kind of token-based approach and appends it to the URL that it calls.
Yeah.
Again, that's something that in a real-world scenario, would that really hold up to scrutiny? Probably not. You'd want to have something like some kind of user access token which goes ahead and is pushed through to validate, does that person have authority? Are they authorized to go and do that? So I have actually been working on an Azure AD B2C implementation. The challenge I've got at the moment, and this might be a fun challenge for anyone listening in to think over. I know how I need to fix it and approach it, but I'll give everyone the challenge to think about and see what other people think of. Is Azure AD B2C is one tenant. However, I want to use managed service identities. So if I want a managed service identity coming from an Azure resource, that is in my main tenant. So EasyAuth only allows you to associate with one tenant when you configure it, I believe. I'm happy to be proven wrong on that if things have changed. So what I need to do, I think, is I need to implement my own verification process in my code rather than using EasyAuth, which is okay. So that's, again, something security that can be done to kind of increase the bit of scrutiny that's going on there. But this works fine. This works okay for what is here.
the only reason I ask the question is that I like to, and as we all do in this, and doing what we all do in Azure, is to encourage people to think about security.
Yeah, 100%.
Even if, especially for even open source projects, you're pulling in the open source code, you're pulling in, but think about, hopefully the project creator and founders and contributors are all thinking about security as well. But that doesn't absolve you of responsibility when you're using it or when you're contributing to it. You've got to think
100%.
security as well. So Richard says depend a bot for the win there. So yeah.
And honestly, that point I want to jump in on just super quickly. Bit of a plug, but here we go. If anyone hasn't watched it yet, what day are we? Thursday. An episode came out yesterday on my channel. Find vulns before they find you. Listen to that one. Really great session chatting with developer Steve Kuchin. He's a developer advocate over at Snyk. And we talk about that. We talk about this fact that regardless of who you are in open source software, whether you're the owner, the maintainer, the contributor, or just Joe Bloggs who's reading and you see something you think is a security vulnerability, it's not on one person to fix that. It's on all of us to look at that. And I mentioned in that video, I really want to add comments to my website, and there's a really great project out there on GitHub discussions. On GitHub, open source project using GitHub discussions to embed comments as JavaScript using GitHub discussions. Really great idea. Love it. I read through the code, and there's just a couple of things that I just don't sit completely right with me, and I just need to understand a little bit more, and I just haven't had the chance to dig into them and work with a maintainer yet on that. So for obvious reasons, I won't say who or what or anything. But
security should definitely be front and center, regardless of what you're doing. If you're working in IT at all, or app development, deploying platform, security should be front and center. Nobody wants to be working for the company that is the next big headline in terms of a vulnerability or a cyber attack or a breach. So, okay, that I'll get down off my soapbox now about security. So we'll move on. Do you want to talk? I know we're pushing the hour now. So
I'm good.
You're using functions, which functions are going to be super cheap, if not free, if you're only running them very, very seldom. But you've got application insights there. You've got some storage accounts there. Your original platform was £5 or £6 a month for your storage and your CDN and all of that. What's the sort of general costs on a monthly basis, like including your buffer and all of the functionality that you've built?
Yeah, good question. So I can't remember how much buffer cost me, in all honesty. It's one of those costs where it's on my card, it just goes out. I kind of ignore it now, so I couldn't even tell you, in all honesty. For the approvals side of things, I was actually digging into this earlier, and I've got advanced threat protection coming out in this resource group, so I need to do a bit of digging because I'm trying to figure out what threat protection is actually protecting me against in this resource group. So I just need to understand the cost of that one a bit, actually. That one did surprise me, which was interesting. And you'll notice it kind of popped up around here, so I must have turned something on, which I think I did, to be fair, so I just need to look into that one. So, beforehand, otherwise, you're talking maybe £1, if that, I think, when we were looking back at it. Let me just jump back again here. Not even that, you're talking across the month, you're trending towards £1 maybe.
So despite all of that extra functionality you built, it's not really costing you too much else? That's
for the approvals side of things. And again, I need to investigate why that bump was there. The main one then, here we go, there's my costs.
Very, very little in reality.
Yeah. Now I thought I would have seen Service Bus pop up on that one, actually. Let's just go to subscription level just in case anything is jumping out of the resource group for whatever reason. Cost. analysis.
Richard, are you suggesting putting this in an MSDN subscription so it doesn't actually cost you any money?
So that's what I have at the moment. That's what I have at the moment here. Because again, you know, if it goes down, it's not the end of the world. You know, me forfeiting SLAs is not the end of the world for this as a platform. But you know, if someone was doing this for production workload, of course, very different discussion. So there we go. Service bus £6.68. So you're probably looking around what, £7, £8, £10 a month maybe. Let's round up. Honestly, the time that it would take interrupting me to schedule all those posts and the opportunity loss of me not posting about my content because I'm notorious, as I mentioned in the beginning, for forgetting, is probably worth that price a month, in all honesty, just to make it easy. And let's face it, right? We'll say it as it is. We're all techies. We all love pet projects. This is my little pet project that I'm nurturing, and this is the thing I've been working on. So, you know, a bit of money towards that, it's fine. You know.
Excellent. So, I mean, it's not breaking the bank either. So,
no.
If it's bringing a time saving that you can spend doing something else, creating content or spending time with loved ones or reading a book, whatever it is that you're doing, then that's well
exactly.
worth it.
And I would say one final thing with the costs, of course, is things like functions and things like Service Bus as well, even App Insights. Of course, they do go up linearly with consumption, right? Because it's pay for what you use, pay as you use it. So that's just something to bear in mind, that if you did have some kind of monster ingestion where you were bringing loads and loads of posts in, well, I'd love to know how on earth you could go and approve all those posts. If you've got some tricks, I'd love to know. But obviously cost is going to scale up linearly alongside that. And Rich, yes, I love your point about making this a SaaS app. This is actually something I'm thinking about, what can be done to convert it into that. Even like a multi-tenanted type thing is thoughts that have gone in my mind. Not even necessarily to monetize it, but just as an example for people who want to build those kind of applications, that how does it work? How would it work? So absolutely something on my mind. But again, finite time, finite resources.
Let's find the time for that. So that actually Richard's point there about the SaaS app leads us into, so we're just after 9 o'clock, so we'll wrap up in a few minutes. But I just wanted to talk about what's the future functionality plans? What's next for this project, aside from, you know, the longer term goal of making it a SaaS based application?
Yeah, so I mean, the immediate, excusing the pun of my different actions here, the immediate next thing is going to be getting up a roundup type activity, getting rid of the dependency from Buffer, and just figuring out, once I've done that, because that'll be the core functionality I look to set out, just level setting a bit and thinking, right, where do I want to take this as a platform? Because I think it does have some potential, you know. For me, it's about what are those things that I haven't quite thought of yet. I know it sounds a bit cliche, but what are those integration points I haven't really thought of as options? Like, for ages, I've wanted to go and email the guys over at Engine to make my content available in part of their roundups. And every week goes by, and every week I think, oh man, that's another week I've forgotten to go and email them. Could I have some automated process which just goes and emails the content that I've published that week out to them, and, you know, automatically categorizes it based on what they do? Could I do things like
they're the crowd
services
behind Azure Weekly, aren't they?
Yes, exactly. You know, could I integrate things like cognitive services into it? One thing which was really interesting that I was wondering is, can I even pull keywords and key entities and key sentiment and things out of those posts so that it helps me, rather than having to go into the post? I can just see, okay, this one's about Kubernetes, it's about storage, and it's about a general availability, and these things have been released. And I can get the key points by extracting some of those entities and those sentiment. Some of those aspects then as well, could I enrich that a little bit? And again, thinking of some of the great questions in the chat, can I reduce some of that overhead that I've got on approving things? Could I make Skynet, because it knows the type of content that I post, it's evaluated my Twitter feed. Can I then automatically set it and train it and say, this is the type of content I like, now you go start approving or declining content, and almost have like a double lock kind of thing, in terms of, this is what we think you want to approve. Is that right? Yes.
Progressing towards, sometimes Richard just said the exact same thing, some sort of AI integration where
exactly
it's learning what you talk about and can integrate with what you're building here to, take the decision making, or at least smooth that process anyway.
Yep, exactly. So I mean,
all works in progress. The worry is Skynet, of course. We all know what happened there. So
yeah, at that point, I need to worry about if I try and change my identity, or if I change job or role or company, what does it start doing? Does it learn about that before I do? Does it know? Does it start predicting, hey, Chris is now going to go and start talking about databases, right? What's it trying to tell me?
You get paranoid very quickly.
Yeah, so exactly.
We've covered quite a breadth of stuff there. We've covered the architecture. What is it? What does it do? Why does it do it? And like we said at the start, at the top of the call, or of the video, this is just to give you community contributors, content creators, ideas for what more you can do over your YouTube channel, over your blog posts, and to integrate all of that information with what's already being produced out there by Azure, by Microsoft 365, or whatever platform it is that you're writing about, that you're contributing to. So for me, this is a very, very powerful solution, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes and how it develops. Is there anything you want to cover off before we wrap up, Chris? Or I think we've covered everything in quite a bit of depth there. If there's any questions, I'm sure Chris wouldn't mind you tweeting him. And of course, if you want to contribute to the open source project, then his DMs, I'm sure, are open.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like I've said, the intent is to go open source. It's not quite there yet. So if there's interest, shout, let me know. And obviously, I can prioritize that as and when I can. But if there's interest, again, there's that's open source, right? There's a community around that. So if there's interest, absolutely, let's look at that. And I think, just to highlight, everything we've talked about is Azure Integration Services and just the power of it. There's things like API management, Logic Apps, Azure Functions, Service Bus. We didn't talk about API management because it's not really part of my use case here. But it just shows how all of those technologies can come together and solve a problem like this. So whilst this might not be the type of problem that you want to solve, maybe just have a little bit of a think, what are those things which are maybe just like paper cuts that add up every day, and they take minutes of every day, hours of the week, and then kind of add up over time? What are those things that you just want to automate and get rid of, and how can you get rid of them? Something we didn't talk about was Dev2 and Hugo cross-posting, and that could be another time perhaps, or a blog post. But there's lots of different ways you can automate things. And I do it with GitHub Actions, do it with this integration stuff, and it saves me a ton of time, and it's been a fun pet project.
Excellent. Well, I think that probably rounds us out for the evening. It's shortly after 9. I think we've talked cost, we've talked security, we've talked architecture. I think next time around we might dig in a bit more to what you're doing with your Dev2 and your Medium and stuff, and maybe get an update on what where you are with your integration platform and who's contributing and what changes they're bringing. And that's it. That's excellent. So thank you, everybody. I enjoy a good interactive chat on these sorts of videos. So thank you all for contributing. Chris, thank you very much for having me.
No, and Carl, thank you for hosting. So with that, time for me to wrap up. So thank you for joining and hosting an awesome session. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
So there we go, folks. We have been talking all about my integration platform, my little pet project that as I say, I kicked something off in the very beginning with very loosely defined requirements. That didn't work so well as expected, and then over time grew it into this platform that now we've talked about for the last hour or so. So you know the deal. If you like the session, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell. Your host for the evening has been the amazing Carl Cook. So do check Carl out over on Twitter, Carl_IT_nerd, or his blog, IrishTechie.cloud, I believe it is as well. Please do go ahead, check that out. And of course, if you do want to contribute and you think this could be useful for something you're working on, hit me up. We'd love to chat on that further. So otherwise, folks, stay safe, stay healthy, and until the next one, bye for now.